So first met Kai 5 years ago during COVID, and we did some webinars, and it was Pete Langerfeld, our videographer and partner in this, and him and I used to go to our old office and have our parties, and we had a little studio and stuff. And I think I saw Kai interviewed on morning TV, and I was at the stage of trying to get speakers. So generally what I do is if I saw someone interesting on television in and around our area, I just message them on LinkedIn, and Kai was kind enough to come back to me. And now 5 years on, we're delighted that you've got time out of your schedule. I know you're off to Europe tomorrow to come and speak to us in person, because I'm sure we'll all agree that's a much better experience.
Thank you.
Without further ado, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. I will definitely give a short introduction, but first I want to take you, this morning I was flustered. So I was very surprised that I got flustered, because normally we get into sports a little bit as well. Normally I get up 4 or 5 a.m. and go for a long run. This morning I skipped my run because of, well, here we are. It would have just been even more flustering. And instead, I was outside. That wasn't Melbourne sky, but roughly, I was outside in our backyard with our cat playing a little bit. And then lots of swear words came into my head, thinking, oh dear, that's the nice version of it. I forgot to ask why we're here. And I know every audience wants to know why we're here, and I just assumed people like you who get up early before work and are so dedicated to be here, you're very clear why you are here. So, but before I introduce myself, maybe I'll just give you a sense of what I hope we get out of this session. 3 things. So, team is obviously the big word above it. I would love to discuss a very simple framework of what team stages there are, so we can actually reflect of where are we in our teams. I'm sure all of us somehow participate in teams, or we're leading teams, and where are we? So we actually have a sense of what other stages are there. Either quite often we want to evolve to the next stage, but also if we already think we're very evolved, there might be a stage which we're not really aware of. So maybe we open up another stage and see, I thought we were perfect. And personally, I haven't seen that many perfect teams. They are there, but it's also not very stable being perfect. So that's what I would love to chat about today, and it will be a bit engaging. There will be a little bit of getting up and movement, so bear with me there of managing the space and the energy. But with no further ado, my motivation of being here, probably I show you a picture when I was little. There was breakfast on offer. So just a very quick introduction of who I am. So I was born in Germany. So it's not a South African accent. It's German. Grew up in Cologne. And then the big wild world somehow pulled on me. Went to Scotland for a year to school. Then after English, I somehow was more drawn towards Seville and spent 3 years in Seville, where also my love for running really flourished. Did a PhD there, and then went also into the consulting world, where again I always avoided Germany and somehow worked a lot through Eastern Europe, including Moscow was probably one of the highlights. I wouldn't recommend going right now. Tokyo, and then after 6 years of McKinsey, ended up in Hawthorne East at Coles Supermarket in and then had that kind of inkling, I do want to do what I'm doing now, but wasn't prepared enough, so somehow the competition got hold of me, and I sold my soul again for another few years, went to Sydney, and but in that time I ramped up my running. So I was really in senior management, and I managed to get to World Championship level with the Australian national team. We'll speak a little bit about that. And to bring it all together is what I'm doing right now. I founded Turning Right, which is my little business, which was exactly the beginning when we had our first conversation. And what I do in there is helping leaders unlock their challenges. So that's probably the common thread in my life, is navigating complexity and seeing what can be done, which you think can't be done. So the three things I'm doing sounds boring when you say it this way, but there is the one-on-one work, which I love, is working with leaders and executive coaching because it's somewhat the deepest work. It's quite often, or most of the time, it's linked to the teamwork. That's what we'll be talking today. And yes, then the kind of the rah-rah sessions like today, maybe a little bit of rah-rah. There's also some fun having a bit more energy with bigger groups as well. So that's all about me. But let's get into the content and let's go a little bit into, I see very few of you in running clothes and sport clothes here. We will be straddling business and sport. So whenever I speak sport, think of business. And you could also do it the other way around. When we talk business, it's actually relevant for sport as well. So
I know there are quite a few keen runners here, Kay, rest assured.
I've spoken to a few, and yes. So let's take it really up a notch from the typical park run. And I'm not belittling anybody who does shorter mileage. I'm just not good at shorter, punchy mileage. So if I was, I wouldn't be running. This was a 250-kilometer race. I just have to go to long distances because I'm just no good at the really short ones.
You could find somewhere in the middle, 5K or 250, go all out.
So it sounds like a very lonely sport. So the question is, how is that linked to team? And it's true, it can be pretty lonely. This was a 100-kilometer race near Port Macquarie where you're basically on your own all the time. So there is not a lot of team necessarily involved, but, and that's the big but, I understood early, if you think you can do it alone, you will be on your own. And this is probably one of my highlight races, Coast to Cosy. It's called. You run 240 kilometers from the beach in New South Wales to the top of Mount Kosciuszko. Without a team, you can't do that. This is 102 kilometers into the race. As you can see who's the runner who's most exhausted in here. But it is... it's important to work together, and the big question is, what stages of a team can we build? I want to go into an example of what not to do, maybe. And that was my first big race where something was really on the line. Normally it's the ego on the line, that's always on the line, but after an amazing race, quite often there is a pretty pulling you down from paradise into reality. And that was 2015, where I'd gotten a call from the president of Australian Ultra Running saying, why don't you make the Australian team for 100 kilometers and we go to the World Champs? Ego loved it. Feet were somehow, my legs were pretty good in place. So I went to Christchurch, 100-kilometer race, where to do 50 times 2-kilometer laps, so which actually has the advantage of you see a team every 2 kilometers and they can somehow help you. So it's not lonely, it's just very repetitive. And so long story short, I was there. I had a great team in place. So I had by then my mentor, and he was a sports psychologist who's influenced quite a lot of what I'm doing now as well. So it's Gavin Freeman, my partner Rebecca. She's naturally, I mean, she has to be supportive, but she loves the sport as well. And then there is a big team around it who didn't have to come to the race. So you have to take care of nutrition, you have to take care of, so I see a chiro, I see a physio, I get everything done. So it's like servicing a car. But on the day, these two people and we somehow have to get it done. I've got a target time. I know the target time might not be good enough because there are other people in Australia who might eventually be better. So it's a moving target, which makes it hard. And I was fit enough to do it. I needed to run 4:30s roughly per kilometer, 400 kilometers. And the wheels fell off probably 2 hours into the run, where target time was 7:30. So I'd done training runs which were better than that. And my mentor, so Gavin, he always said, well, the difference between good and great is the ability to perform consistently under pressure. I did not have that. And this one, while it might be an individual important message, it's even more important for teams. How every team can somehow do something when the pressure is not on. But really think of your own teams. What happens when the pressure is on? The human side comes out, and these other people, they're not necessarily all nice humans. In that case, unfortunately, it was me who was not the nice human. So I was getting my first drink bottle. I had a plan of how many drink bottles, and Rebecca was in charge giving me a drink bottle. And I tried to grab it, was somehow far too flustered, missed it, and somehow lost it. So I was not a good team player at all. And the worst thing was from there, it just escalated in terms of never really got back on track and fell short significantly. So I was an hour slower than I needed to be. I was probably more than an hour slower than I could have been. And probably the only exciting news is that Rebecca then, a couple of years later, she went to do that race, and she smashed the time I did and became a New Zealand champion in that race, which I'm very proud of. She probably had the better team around her because she was in the better headspace. So, so the message really around teams, I think, is important that if you want to unlock really big challenges, a high-performing team is not a nice to have. And that's not how I experienced it being in corporate, in the teams I've been part of. It was like always, well, task, task, task. And if you have time, also a nice team, yeah, that's great. Also, let's do the fluffy stuff and get teams somehow a good feeling. But when we're saying we want to overcome big challenges, and a team is absolutely fundamental of how high up that ladder is the team. So I would love to have that conversation with you of what does that ladder look like, and then plot where do you see your teams. Now I know we might all be part of different teams, but if you just already pick mentally a team you are curious about, and it can be a team of the past. I know some of us have moved just recently what we're doing, so think of the last team or think of any other team, like what's your primary team you're part of? And then let's plot where are we there, because it will be interesting to see where we all position ourselves. I'll skip this and start with, this is probably the last bit of theory before we go into the model. It's a team is really how we define it is something small, something maximum 10, 12 people. I know colloquially we say, oh, this is my team, and we refer to an organization of 600,000 people. It's okay that we say that's a team, but it isn't in the strict sense. That's not a team, that's an organization. A team is a small group of people with complementary skills. So we really need them. There's some kind of joint responsibility, and we'll get to that. And we need the team because individually we can't get as much done as we can do collectively. So there's some kind of an incremental performance gain. That's what we need. So going to the moon, it's not, you can't go to the moon with a group of people who just do their thing. We need some incremental gain by doing that. And the really important thing, which is the challenging part, is a team needs a challenge. Without a challenge, a team will always somehow be deflated in a way. It's okay to, I mean, they can plot along, but you don't need the team really. There's no why. And you need a challenge which either then makes them thrive or they somehow really struggle. I mean, that's the hard bit, and we've probably been part of both types of teams, the ones which thrive and the ones who break apart. So, I've got a chart here where we will plot ourselves, and let me explain the axis. It might look difficult, for, complex for ones, for some of us, but let's keep it very simple. There's really two things a team, two axes and two things which are important. everybody will understand that a team has output. That's the impact. What is the output of the team? And it's either more than the sum of the parts, or it is less of the sum of the parts. And then on the other axis, the x-axis, it's how much do they collaborate. So in a way, if we start here, it's with no collaboration, obviously there is no incremental gains, so it's the sum of the parts in a way. So if we just do our thing right now, we will all open our laptops or whatever we want to do and do our stuff, there will be no collaboration and no kind of incremental gain. We're just as good as the sum of the parts. Quite often though, and that's the tricky part, we get to pseudo teams. So a team forms, has a lot of work in terms of we meet for meetings, we have some of our rules, we set things up, which takes a lot of energy. So we increase our collaboration rate, but we get nothing out for that. Then we drop to here. That's the worst place you can be in. Like you do stuff, you invest, and you get nothing back for it. Actually, it takes away your resources. Those experiences are pretty dire in a way, and not unusual. Then when we move up and our collaboration improves quality-wise, we can get to a potential team. So that's not a bad spot. You make an investment, you get nothing back for it. That's like the stock market quite often, where you say, well, at least I didn't lose money. But you still have invested quite a lot. You didn't lose anything. There's no incremental impact. As you can imagine, the next two stages is where we want to be. One, and this is normally what we talk about a team, what are the criteria? You really invest into clarity of the why, the purpose and the goals. You are very clear on how you work together. And thirdly, and that's the really big one, you have collective accountability. That's a tricky one, and I want to expand on that tiny bit so you can think of your own team in your head. How good is the collective accountability? We're all used to individual accountability. I mean, in school, we do exams, and typically it's an individual exam, and somehow I'm responsible, I get my mark, and that's all good. Then we get put together into groups to somehow do some group papers, and the blaming starts of saying, yeah, well, I've done my part, but what about you guys? And the same, obviously, in any team is collectively, can we really look into the mirror and say, I'm here for what I'm doing. So if I was the CFO, I obviously have responsibility for finance. That's my individual accountability. And I'm also responsible for employee engagement, for revenue, for cost, for safety, which is not necessarily my individual accountability, but that is what we as a leadership team are all responsible for. So collectively, that's us. It's quite a high bar. And then the real kicker to the high-performing team is, to what extent are we committed to each other's growth and success? So, and that takes a team to another level. Let's go back to sports. If you think of the amazing sports teams, they're clear about this, and the difference then becomes, to what extent, when somehow the camera's off, can they have a robust conversation where whatever needs to be said is said, and they still get on with each other afterwards and somehow grow through those conversations. So I'm not saying these here are nasty conversations, but they can be pretty robust, of saying there's a conflict, how do we manage through that conflict and come stronger out on the other side? And that requires us being committed to each other's growth and success. Last one, and then we can plot ourselves. There's one at the very beginning, which is technically not a team. And it's actually not a bad position to be in. It's a working group. So a working group is more of a committee. If you think, for example, if I may take you guys here, I'm sure in your work you will be a team wherever you want to plot yourself. And there are situations where you do not need a team. So if you take, for example, organizing this morning. You can organize this morning by being a working group, and that might be a very smart place to be, because you minimize collaboration. You say there's individual accountability. Somebody organizes the setup, somebody organizes the videography, somebody organizes the food, somebody sends out the invites. There's a little bit of coordination involved. So yes, a bit of collaboration, but you're not wasting your time to really go into all that team setup of saying what's the purpose, success, the working approach, the collective accountability, being jointly committed to each other's growth and success. It's possible to do it as a working group, and that might be good. If you're doing 50 of these sessions, probably I would recommend don't be a working group, because you want to be a well-oiled machine, and then maybe you want to be higher up there.
Yeah.
Just
I guess an example could be, say, in organisations, if you set up a small team to do, look at proof of concepts for a certain idea. We're in our business at the moment, we're looking at how we can use AI better across our businesses, and we've got a small working group, spearheading that for us. So that type of thing you're talking about, Kai.
Exactly. So if I can, let me ask you to plot. Each one of you gets a dot. Take one team you're part of. I would say primary team, the team which you're somehow most thinking about, and just plot with one sticker on that curve, where do you see that team? There is no right and wrong. Other team members in that team might evaluate it differently.
So should it be something you're currently engaged in, or could it be from a previous experience?
It could be a previous experience. It's make it meaningful to you, like something you're really thinking about. So in my case, I would right now say, well, because I'm a sole trader in a way, there's no individual team I'm part of right now, I would probably just pick my last experience at Woolies and say, I'll take this leadership team, and that's fine. Or I could pick a sports team I'm part of, whatever, there's no right or wrong. Yes?
Families as well.
The question is whether you have an incremental performance goal. And how voluntary is it being part of your family? So you can do it.
How you define incremental performance? I mean, for me, with 2 teenage daughters, it could be they go to school every day. For
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So you can do that. Any other questions? Because I'm really curious where you plot yourselves. Are you clear?
Yeah.
Sorry, if it was a team that you've worked with to actually develop that team, would it be where they finished? So I finished working with
That's okay.
Would it be
Yes.
where they finished or where they started?
Pick a moment in time. It's a very good point. So teams are not stable. Obviously, quite many teams, when they form, they typically don't form at the highest stage. Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good comment. I think that's worth a book.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's fine.
There we go. There we go.
I completely forgot about the books.
There we go.
All right, everybody clear? Please just pick up
Anyone?
one dot. There's no discrimination in what kind of dots the colors don't matter.
Anyone?
Just
Going to lead the way?
yes. So please,
There we
you
go,
can
you
get
get
the
a
big
book.
dot and. I am curious. I would love to hear from a representative of each one of them, and just getting a sense of your little story. So please don't talk as much as I have done right now, because we won't have that time. But getting a sense of why did you put it there, and any kind of insights you have around that, because then I think we can all learn from that. And whoever wants to speak first, like who would love to kick us off? Like, I have an incentive here. Too late.
Bribery normally works.
Do you want to join me? Sorry. You are...
I'm Noha.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to
So
meet
first of all here,
Thank you.
and now you have to deliver. So where did you put your dot?
My dot here.
High performing team. Tell us a little bit of why, what were you thinking about, and what's the insight?
Okay, it's a team that I cannot get out of my see their faces sitting around the war room in an agile project. Two things that are remarkable about this team. If you are sitting and you just look, eye contact, I understand what you want to say without a word.
Yeah.
So that's the first one. And the second one is we all care about getting value for our work done for the organization. So we've transitioned from this is what I want to do for myself to this is what I want to do for the organization. But also caring about our own mental health, which was transcending all. So after work, you get phone calls. How do we care? How do we make this person feel better about this? As opposed to gossiping about backstabbing or whatever.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get teased. So these are the two things: eye contact, transition, conveying meanings more than words.
Yeah.
And the second one is basically mental health space.
Yeah. So the great examples for clarity, purpose, and goals. They seem to be very committed to each other. Implicitly, I assume the working approach is clear. Just to double check, collective accountability, how did they deal with that? Because that's normally a tricky one.
I believe that because everyone was focused on getting the goals for the organization, so collectively everybody owned the targets or the goals, be it for the short run or be it on the long run. We stopped talking about where we stand and we stopped talking about how do we get the product or the feature committed to the client so that the client is happy.
Yeah. And that's quite, it takes quite some mental agility, thank you. It takes mental agility to be focused on one's own work and have the bigger picture in mind as well. So the straddling of I versus us, or I and us. Brilliant, thank you. Great, so let's, in no particular order, I'm interested in pseudo teams, potential teams, or real teams. Thank you.
I put my doc in potential teams. So the group that we're in, is one which is a leader who thinks she's very inclusive, but it's kind of like a benevolent dictatorship. It's kind of her way or the highway. So we're effectively a group of individuals trying to do our work, sort of almost in spite of.
I'm just checking here on this here. So common working approach, common is her, she's common.
Yeah, sort of like very approachable as long as you land up on the decision that she's already decided that which makes it interesting.
Yeah.
We work with other parts in there, so we've got good accountability in other areas. So we're collectively clear about what we're doing as an organisation and the part of business we're at, but as a collective team, as I said, it's very much a federation. And individuals applying their skills and their expertise in there as opposed to leveraging a team together to bring it all.
And the potential team is an interesting one because one should actually, my recommendation would always be to check, would we be better off as a working group? Because you actually, in a corporate setting it's not easy, but organizing oneself as a working group declutters all the kind of complexity. It's way simpler, and you're basically a committee. If everybody can just do their stuff, you save a lot of energy. Or, which often is probably the preferred way, is then going through the work and saying, okay, we grow as a team. And those kind of conflicts which are bubbling along, simmering, they're actually the crest on the mill, just saying the conflicts help you build a bigger team.
Yeah, I just wanted to, the company I worked with before I joined ANZ was a Zimbabwean and South African who led a really high IQ, zero EQ, and it was his way of the highway.
Yeah.
It was, clear it's like you weren't going to change him, so anyway, the option was to leave somewhere else.
Great, thank you. All right, so
we have just ask quickly, sort of along that line. So you're speaking about, a collection of individuals there effectively. Do you think, and I know we're all sick of this remote working bit in office, but it is relevant. Do you think a remote working more often than in office, drives a lot of that behaviour, that we can all be productive doing our individual jobs, but there's less of that sense of team and community? Just interested in your opinion on it.
It's probably a chicken egg problem. What's first there? Because it's obviously possible to have pretty strong teams which are virtual teams. I mean, it is absolutely possible. It depends whether the conflicts which come through that working mode can be dealt with or not. So I would say it's not the situation per se which defines where are we at.
Yeah.
It's the challenges which come with the situation. Can we work through them?
Yeah.
And remote working comes with challenges.
Yeah.
Can we work through them and then actually grow to here?
So there's no greater propensity one way or another. It's
Exactly.
on the individuals
I mean,
in the
yes, it's
company.
easier if you meet at the coffee machine physically. It might be easier, but it's still possible really being committed to each other if you don't have a coffee machine because the other person is somewhere in New York.
Yeah, cool.
But you have to make an effort.
Yeah.
I'm tempted to go down the rabbit hole. It's a really important and interesting question. As a statement, I would say teams are possible with anyone, but there is individual growth potentially required or very likely required to build strong teams. So yes, a team is a team journey and it is an individual journey. That's what I love about my work. Quite often I start with teams and then I have to work with individuals, not because they are a problem, but because each one of us brings some baggage. And if we're committed to each other's growth and success, am I committed to also working on my baggage to, in a way, grow through it? Beautiful. What I love, because we've just moved on to the real team, what I love about it is the mentality of a real team. So can I just unpick what you've said? It's not on the slide, but a real team essentially has the mentality of we are great. That's what you're saying. Very often, it's very human, we moan. And moaning is not we are great. Moaning is more like my life sucks. And there is, in between, there is this kind of I am great. So from my life sucks, so I'm the victim, to I am great, but in brackets, you guys are not, doesn't get us here. So that is quite often here. And it's very individually driven. It's through effort. It's through individual contribution. And individual contribution is still important, but getting to we are great is the difficult one. And that's the nice, you've summed that up so nicely for the real team. So I think there's every team, the challenge is at the heart of the team, as I said before. And what I mean by that is challenges happen. Without the challenge, you don't need a team. So that's the first thing, because you don't need it. So every team has challenges, and how we build, back to my race, how we deal with that pressure of something needs to be done. It's complex, it's beyond us. And then in every single conversation we have as a team it can either go into more towards chaos or more towards coherence. And it's those kind of, the high-performing teams, they manage challenges to get to coherence. And these teams, they use the challenges and somehow fall apart. And what the slide is somewhat just trying to say in a very, very, very simple way is look at those 4 criteria. Because if you are here, pretty much everything falls apart. I can't pick one thing. And it's probably, if I was here, I would work with each one of them individually as well. Like really look at them of saying, well, do we bring what it takes? So very likely, individually, they're very prone to being in the drama triangle. And we all are, but they're entrenched in it. Can we actually get to some ownership? Can we get to some kind of listening? Can we get to some kind of curiosity? So individual things, and then we can work on that. Whereas these guys, they might just need a little bit of fine-tuning. It's way easier because they've got the foundations.
Can I just ask, building on that, something around that, and you mentioned around the egos and I'm great and the others, I think was your exact words. But if you look at sporting teams, it's quite often star players, and it's the same in businesses, that people are really good individual practitioners, or Manchester United, Ronaldo would be a good example, or real star players. And these days, as a leader, you still need to be able to get the best out of these players. So most people here are in leadership roles. Can you offer any sort of insights, tips and tricks to how you might manage that situation? Because it's very common, right?
It is very common.
You can't have one rule for one and one rule for the others.
And then
you
have probably, it reveals a little bit about how much older I am than what I look like. is the Chicago Bulls, who had lots of individual star players with Michael Jordan, Pippen, and others, Rodman. They had heaps of star players, and they were still here for a long period of time. So
does that speak to the brilliance of Phil Jackson as I think that's his name, isn't it?
As a coach.
And, having the fireside chats.
But those guys, they went to the locker room, and I think if we would have looked at the conversations they had, they probably were pretty raw, and I'm not saying do that with your teams, but they were capable of doing that. Yeah.
Well, he did let Dennis Rodman go to Las Vegas for 2 weeks, didn't he, at one point, to blow off some steam?
It's unbelievable how they did that.
Yeah.
But you take managing conflict, that's probably the first one, that's a difficult one. Yeah. Because we all contract so easily of saying, well, they've done this to me, or I have to push them harder because they're not doing stuff. So that drama triangle, navigating that is a foundational thing, and some teams with star players can still do that.
So do you think high performance teams have basically got leadership at every level? If you look at that example, they had a dressing room full of leaders, right?
Yes, and they can fall into line when they need to, and still step up. Also, it's an agility. I like the word agility beforehand, which is we use the word agility a lot, but how agile are we really? Of balancing, because nothing is stable. That's the thing of, do we get to chaos or do we get to coherence? Teams are not stable either. Where are we drawn to? Yeah. And when a team is here, they need a bigger challenge, because if the challenge drops away, they will not stay there. What I'm hearing in what you're saying as well is the collective accountability remains, even though we have a superstar. Because it's so easy to say, well, I'm just the little one in this team, and the superstar is the one who has the responsibility. I mean, it's the Ronaldo who has to score the goals. I'm not having collective accountability anymore. And I need to be at eye level with somebody who is a superstar, way beyond where I'm at potentially individually. That's not easy. So I wouldn't all blame it on the superstars saying, well, they are just grabbing ownership. Awesome. But also, what about the others who give up ownership? So it is on both sides, really. And what I can imagine is that the challenges also just rise. I mean, there won't be any business as usual ever. The challenges just go up, and that actually helps staying in here. So if the challenges don't go up, let's go back to the simple example of going to the moon. Once you have gone to the moon, it takes a high-performing team to go to the moon, but once you've done it, you're somewhat, okay, what next? Why do I have to be committed? This is all uncomfortable, being committed to each other's growth and success, doing all these other things. It's when, in such an example as you've described, if the challenges go up, that's actually a blessing, because you have to grow with your challenges.
Kai, could you talk to us about mindset?
Yes.
Because obviously, specifically, I'm really interested. Obviously, you do these mega impressive races. You've got to get the miles in your legs, clearly. But what work do you do on mindset? Because I think that's pretty relevant to being in a high-performance team.
Yes. For me, an example. So, and similar to any other team, last year, I was somewhat more I had more of a slump in running, which happens. And then you say, yeah, well, it's mindset. Yes, it was mindset, but how do you get out of that slump? Yeah. It's really hard. And the slump was like 6-12 months. What do you do? The basics. Yes, you do the basics of focus on process rather than outcome. Easier said than done. You just do it. Do the work. Yes, some consistency of get the legs right, because the mind will never be okay if the legs aren't okay. Yeah. But then I got towards the race, and I always ask myself, and the race is no different to business, what is this race about? And I normally don't find out until I'm in the race. What is this about? Because it's not about running 500 kilometers. It's somehow, what is my barrier to do that? So, and I'm literally talking about a 500 kilometer race, not last year, but it's like, what is holding me back actually doing that? And at this race last year, when you do the work, you also are a little bit more lucky in a way. There's that famous saying, a little bit more eloquently than
I
not.
practice, the luckier I get, Gary Player.
Exactly. I had a conversation with a previous coach, and just a 5-minute conversation. I said, I'm concerned that I've done all this process work, and I get to the start line, and the only thing which matters to me is the end result. So there's a self-awareness of, I know that, I can't change it yet, but I know it. So at least I'm aware of it. And I said, talk with one of you, that awareness is good, but it's not really worth a lot unless you get to choice and say, like, what's the difference? And he unlocked the different mindset, the kind of beyond we are great, there is life is great.
Yeah.
That's somehow a really good mindset of just then it's easy. And he just said, why don't you get to the start line and your intention is to be the happiest man on the course? Yeah. And it just clicked for me. I'm not saying that is the mindset you all need to go to work and be the happiest man at work, but it unlocked, it pushed me out of that concern of how well will I do, and more into a process of the happiest man on the course. There's a gratitude, there is a completely different center of energy in me. Yeah. I go, and I knew what it meant. I could connect to that high performance feeling, because I know it from other races. I know what it feels like when it's like, wow, it's out there. Logically, you don't get there.
And do you break it down? And this is relevant to high performance teams. Like, I'm a running hack, but I've done quite a few marathons. I used to kid myself to thinking it's just 4 times 10Ks and a little bit. Yeah. So is that the way you approach? Because that's relevant to high performance teams. Break it down to bite-sized chunks.
So
it works.
It's that I think it's the combination of, you have to do the work up front. There's preparation. You have to have a plan of how you approach it. You have to do all of that. And then you know where's your issue. And my issue is, if I then go into little Kai who just wants to do well, which is awesome. Yes, it's great to just want to do well, but it doesn't help you. Not at this age anymore, of just wanting to do well is potentially the worst you can do. And then find a thing which kicks you into the next gear, which is just be happy. Yeah. And that doesn't mean be happy and just don't do any of the work. Yeah, I'm not saying that. It's balance.
Park run 100 times.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah. How hard can it be?
Yeah. Yeah, very good. I think we might have time for one more question.
One more question and one more book for one word. I think it comes back to that question, what is the race about? Such a remote team needs to ask themselves, what are we about, and how do we create coherence? Because we all understand that remote work can get to chaos. We all understand that, and some people are very fearful of that. And I get one is fearful, but fearful doesn't help managing towards coherence. And it's just a different challenge. And if we take the challenge for what it is, we can overcome that challenge as well. If we say it's God-given and therefore it's not possible, well, it won't be possible. They are right. They're right it's not possible because they don't believe it's possible. Yes. Yeah. But it is possible if you believe it's possible. I like the kind of the balance there just between reactivity and being proactive. I like that because it's okay. It's similar to when you want to buy or sell a house. You want to have as many attractors as you can have and no detractors. This is the kind of house which is just okay. It doesn't have detractors and it doesn't have attractors. It's okay. They are the sum of the parts. That's just what it is. It is an okay team, but it has a lot of potential. All right.
Right.
Who is
time? Jeff Markley. He's already got a book, so next name out. Can't two, I'm afraid, Jeff.
Can't take two. Charles Ricky.
Already has a book. You've already got a book as well.
Well, can't take two. I can't read. That's a doctor.
Nolish. I can't comment.
Already got a book.
Already got a book.
I'm pretty good at picking people with books.
Bill Shanks. He hasn't got a book. Got a book for you there, Bill.
So that's number one.
Michael McGavigan. He hasn't got a book. He's right next to a book. He can help himself. Claire Theobald. You haven't got a book either. There we go. You're on a run here, Kai. Charles. You've got a book.
I pick everybody who's got a book.
Renee Williams. Have you got a book? No, you have now.
4.
Julia Brighty? Book for yourself, coming your way.
Kim
Grisard. There we go, book for you as well.
Don't know how many
How
do I
many
have
got?
left?
Two left. 3
Jack
left.
Steele.
Jack Steele, book for you, Jack, coming your way.
What about this one?
Danielle Sandrese. You've
Got
got
a
a book as well, there we go. 3 to go, Kai.
Sarah.
Sarah Aback. There we go, book for yourself.
Good work.
Tracy
Tracy
Austin. Tracy Austin, book for yourself.
Let's do this one. One to go.
Lucky
Last one.
Lars.
Caitlin.
Caitlin. Got a book
Got a
already.
book. And
Guy Brunston. There we
Perfect.
go, Guy, perfect.
And the comment, in case anybody else who doesn't have a book or who has a book wants more books, first of all, they're all signed. For $20 cash or card, you can get some from me, and I will not get rich from that. So this is not a big sales pitch of making my day, but would be more than happy to share some of the thinking. There's way more about managing, navigating conflict in that book, and hopefully some inspiration for runners and no runners.
So I'd encourage you all to connect with Kai on LinkedIn if you're not already. And if your organisations need advice on high performance teams, clearly Kai is a great person to engage with. Thank you, as always, for making the effort to attend. These sessions only work if people turn up in the morning, so we're always very grateful for everyone's attendance and participation. But Kai, that was absolutely brilliant. So massive round of applause for Kai. Thank you. Thanks, mate. Great.
Cheers. Thanks for having me.